Hello, everybody, and welcome to our launch of our webinar series, A Senior's Guide to Building a Modular ADU. This webinar series is brought to you by Mr. John Aronson, President and owner of Crest Backyard Homes, and myself, President and owner of Golden Age Financial Solutions. What we're going to be doing is just covering the overview of this webinar series, and then throughout the series, we're going to be diving deeper into each of these topics. What we're going to do is we're going to take you through from initial idea all the way through the end result, which is the certificate of occupancy, which gives you the opportunity to put people into these ADUs and actually start renting them out and cash flowing them and really start to maximize your cash flow opportunities. We will ask that you please hold all questions for the end. This presentation is only going to be about 20 minutes long, and then we'll open it up for about 10 minutes of Q&A at the end of the process. So with that being said, I would like to jump right in and introduce Mr. John Aronson. John, tell us a little bit about the differences and some of the pitfalls between doing this process yourself and then why it's such a big benefit to hiring a professional.
Well, simply put, even if you think you have pretty strong skill sets and you feel like you're capable of doing it yourself, at least use an experienced consultant to help navigate you through the entire process. The money you pay a consultant who knows this business inside and out is money well spent. I strongly discourage anyone from taking an extremely complex project like this for a variety of reasons, and we'll be addressing those in forthcoming segments of this series. Unless you're an experienced contractor or at least a very skilled do-it-yourselfer, I strongly encourage you to use a licensed, bonded, insured, and most importantly, an experienced contractor who specializes in ADUs, not just any contractor. That contractor and his team needs to be capable of providing all the design criteria, field evaluation, and site feasibility, as well as the entire permit process, and most importantly, planning, building, and completion of your project. They need to be able to navigate through the entire building department and permit process. This is a very arduous, complex, time-consuming, and often frustrating experience, even for experienced professionals. They'll be dealing with several issues, starting with the permit process, which deals with building, planning, engineering, environmental, which in turn deals with sewer and septic. If the project's in a floodplain, drainage and soil retention will be need to be addressed. If the fire department approval is needed, you'll be dealing directly with the fire department. Likewise, school fees will have to be handled through the local school district directly. Bottom line, there's a lot of moving parts. So just hire Crest Backyard Homes and make the entire process a positive, seamless, successful, and happy experience.
John, it really sounds like you guys are the one-stop turnkey shop.
That would be, yes.
Well, part of this journey, what we're going to help you discover is where you're going to actually put this modular ADU. Part of that decision making is going to come down to, are you going to put this on your primary residence? Are you going to put this on your rental property? Are you going to put this on your children's property? Or maybe a combination of those things. And those are important because it's not just the physical location of the property, it's who's going to be in that environment. If it's going to be a renter on your property, people that you maybe don't necessarily know, you're going to want to consider different orientations. You might not necessarily want that ADU facing into your backyard. Maybe you want a little more privacy, and maybe you'd like your renters to have a little more privacy. So you'd want to orient that maybe away from your home, maybe build a fence around it, maybe a shrub or a hedge around it, just to add a little bit of privacy. Maybe it's going to be for your grandkids or your adult children to come stay at your house. Then you want it oriented differently. You want it oriented facing towards the yard. So these are going to be part of the process that Crest is going to help walk you through to make those decisions. You know, if it's going to be a rental property, another one of the things you're going to want to keep in the back of your mind is, what type of neighborhood is this? You know, if it's going to be downtown SDSU and it's near an environment where there's a lot of college kids, maybe the orientation you want it facing towards the center versus a much quieter neighborhood, you're going to want to have those things facing away from each other so that you don't create that centralized communal space where there can be potential noise issues. Putting it on your children's property, you're going to want to consider what the use is going to be if you're going to go there, if they're going to rent it out for more cash flow, if you're doing this to increase their legacy, or if you're going to rent it out to make more money because that's the place you're going to put it. So these are things we're just going to help you come to the conclusions on so that you make the right decision where to put it. Speaking of deciding where to put it, it's not always up to us. John, why don't you take us through some of the local jurisdictional issues and challenges that you've seen and faced?
Well, most importantly, Jeremy, your contractor is going to need to know the homeowner's local ADU ordinance inside and out. This is critical. Every city and every county has their own ordinances, and they can change as often as you change the sheets on your bed. Believe me, we've been there and done that a number of times, especially the county. As the state continues to amend and update their laws, so too must the local jurisdictions upgrade theirs in order to stay in compliance with this ever-changing ADU landscape, and it is changing by the day. They're coming up with new laws every year. They're going to be introducing some new laws at the end of this year. This can be a very confusing and frustrating experience, and I strongly encourage that the homeowner uses someone who stays on top of all these changes as they occur. The very first thing the contractor will need to do is obtain a topographical map. It's also known as a topo, which is a map of your entire property. We'll be discussing this as well as determining the size and most suitable location for your ADU in more detail shortly. Bottom line, if you really want to protect yourself, I strongly recommend if you don't already have one, you obtain an official survey of your property. This will verify your exact property dimensions by placing monuments in all the corners of your lot and boundary line stakes intermittently around the entire perimeter, delineated exactly where your property is. Nothing could be worse than assuming your fence is on your property line. What if that fence is 6 inches on your neighbor's property? It could be a very bad hair day for you if you decide to build your ADU based on that fence line. I've seen this happen.
Well, John, thankfully I don't have bad hair days.
I was waiting for that.
So take us through some of the site analysis. I know this can be a very, very complex process in and of itself, and there's a lot of decisions to make. So one of the things we talked about, just to give the folks watching, is the idea of, first and foremost, let's just say that after doing the necessary homework, we've decided through just personal choice and local jurisdiction that the ADU is going to get dropped right here on the property. And because the use of it is going to be for adult children and grandkids to come and stay, and then they're going to rent it out from time to time for some longer term rentals when the kids are not able to stop by. So the orientation of the property is going to face towards the yard, so they can enjoy things like this communal fire pit or some of the other activities on the property like the horseshoe pit. So John, start telling us a little bit about how the utility process goes.
Well, the whole idea of the ADU process is to be able to draw your utility lines from your own grid, not the city's. And that saves you additional meter cost and all kinds of things that you don't even want to get involved with. And that's the reason they developed the whole ADU law in and of itself. So you need to identify where all the utilities are located on your property residence, your primary residence, and the lot. Then you've got to determine the most prudent way to navigate them to your ADU. The easiest way to determine this is to draw an outline, as you've done, of the footprint where your ADU will be located. Then you draw lines delineating where the utilities are located around your home and lead them to your ADU. In a perfect world, hopefully they'll all be located within a reasonable proximity to one another. But unfortunately, this isn't a perfect world. So you may have your electric on one side of the property, your gas, water on another, your sewer on yet another. Don't forget the cable and the internet. Each utility will have to be directed to what is called in the modular industry, the pedestal. This is where all the utilities come together in close proximity to one another, and hopefully they're going to be on the side or in the rear of the ADU and not and ideally out of sight. You don't want to have to be looking at your electric panel from your reclining chair while you're tossing back a cool one in the afternoon. If you don't want to have trenches crisscrossing your property, you're going to want to lead them all to 1 or 2 trenches maximum, using 90-degree angle acute turns, not just crisscrossing all over the place. Then all straight, one or 2 straight trenches, if it's possible, to the pedestal and utility connections on the ADU. I hope that makes sense. It can be very complicated.
Absolutely, it sounds like it. Well, this I know adds to a little bit of complexity. Talk us through a little bit about the plot plans and the map work that you have to go through when you're setting up one of these.
Well, the topo delineates your boundaries, as we talked about earlier, your property lines, your setbacks, your public and private easements, any utility easements that might be running in or around or under your property, and that has been a deal breaker a time or two. The location of your existing main utility feeds and gradients. And gradients basically consist of any variations such as inclines, hills, banks, etc. But most importantly, the topo will let you know, based on the location you wish to place your backyard home in, just how large it can be and where it is most suitable to be located on the property. It's also important to note that for any existing structures like sheds, pools, detached garages, things like that are located, you then, based on the location of the ADU, need to determine where the crane and rigging will have to be staged. Will you need traffic control due to blocking your street? Will you need a temporary disconnect from the utility company due to overhead power lines? These costs they have to be accounted for. All this stuff has to be factored in to the equation when you're dealing with a modular ADU. And these are only a few of the many intimate details that will have to be well thought out before you even stick a shovel in the dirt. Again, hiring a competent and experienced contractor is critical to the success of your project and your peace of mind.
Absolutely, I agree. And I've seen those crane sets, and it is an absolute feat to see those things. It is a full-blown production, and so there's a ton of planning that goes into that.
Ties up a lot of space.
Well, let's talk about some of that planning with the field study and the site inspection. Walk us through that, John. Well,
let's take the show on the road. It's time to pay a visit to the site to finalize and mark the location and evaluate and verify any all permitted and unpermitted structures. You got to identify and mark all the utilities, as we explained just a bit ago. You got to mark the desired location of the backyard home, as we also explained, and solidify accessibility for, this is important, accessibility for both the travel route from the factory to the site and on the site itself. Things like low bridges, power lines, acute dips, windy and narrow roads can make it very cumbersome for the toter to navigate. A toter, by the way, is a transporter, the big truck that they use to actually transport the modular to the job site. Add to that actual site accessibility, and all modular ADUs must be crane set. You can't slide them on, you can't back them in, they have to be set by crane on the foundation. Things like overhead power lines, power poles, second-story buildings, tall trees, all these things can be extremely difficult and sometimes even prohibitive. So your site inspection is critical, and the route to that site is extremely critical. The site evaluation will give us what we need to develop an intelligent cost estimate for the transportation, setup, and installation, and allow us to determine a viable flow and timetable for the entire project.
Well, it sounds like there's definitely a lot of planning involved.
A lot of moving parts.
So I know that once you finally get all that planning, this is where it's go time with the city, the building permit process. John, talk to us a little bit about the building permit process, please.
Well, there's several steps that must be taken in order to get to the permit counter, let alone through it. First and foremost, you need to meet any and all engineering requirements, i.e. soils test, and based on the results of the soils test and recommendations from the soils engineer, also known as a geotech, there may be civil and even structural involved. So you got to be prepared to deal with a lot of those expenses on the front end of the project. That's before you even stick a shovel in the ground. You will also need to address septic requirements if applicable to your project. And in San Diego County, there's a whole lot of that. Regardless of the size of your backyard home, you'll definitely be dealing with additional cost on septic. Whether it's enlarging your existing septic tank, extending your leach lines in your leach field, or installing a dedicated septic or approved waste management system, this is all going to have to be addressed and factored in. You'll then need to present multiple copies of approved drawings and specifications, and in the case of a modular ADU, multiple copies of the foundation plan and installation instructions, or installation manual, as they call it. If you don't have your ducks in a row, you'll be sent away with a to-do list and before they'll ever issue you the permit. So once again, it's important to deal with a company that knows how to navigate the permit process and can indeed, and it can be a process.
It sure sounds like it. So this is my favorite part of the whole process. This is where the fun really, really starts to begin. John, take us through the process of you helping folks decide on what the backyard home that's going to finally sit in their property is going to look like.
Well, you're absolutely right. It is probably the most fun part of the project, but it's also the most important part of the entire process. However, it can also be arduous and frustrating experience if not absolutely done correctly from the get-go. You don't want to deal with any changes or change orders, which are costly even on site-built projects. But when your home is going down an assembly line, you're stuck. Any change orders at that point are going to be extremely expensive because everything has to go back through engineering, be approved, and there's added costs. So we want all this stuff done before that thing ever gets to the assembly line. This is where you'll be choosing the size of your ADU, the architectural style, the floor plan, the type of roof and siding you want, and all the finishing touches that bring your ideas to life. You can't, but you can choose from, well, you can either do a single-story studio, as small as a studio. If you don't have room on your lot for a bedroom, you can do a studio, which also has the living area and the kitchen and everything all in one area, and then a privately enclosed bathroom. You can choose from, 1 to 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. You can even do 2-story. The graphic you see in the middle, the 2-story there, is a hybrid. It's the bottom part is a modular, the top part is site built, and we had to do that because of size and lot dimensions. You can basically that's it. Many jurisdictions require you to this is important. Many jurisdictions are going to require you to mimic the architectural motif of the primary residence. But don't worry, modular ADUs come both stucco and site ready. Once it's been delivered and installed, the stucco and roofing materials will be done on site. I'd like to close the conversation actually by saying that there's absolutely nothing that can't be done in the field that can be done in the factory. They build modular units today, all shapes and sizes, curvilinear architectural details. I mean, they've got some really beautiful modular options out there today. As an investor who wants to revisit their investment and start realizing an ROI as soon as possible, modular is the only way to go. Unlike ground up site-built projects that can take as long as 12 to 18 months, a modular project can be done about half that time. While your site's being prepared to accept your backyard home, it's going through the assembly line, and that can be done basically in a matter of weeks, not months. So in a perfect world, they could both come together simultaneously and seamlessly. Really shortens the time.
It sounds like it. And I know these details that you're looking at right now on the screen, the finishing touches, this is where you really get to turn that house into a home. And Crest is able to do absolutely everything you're seeing here. In fact, they've done every one of these projects. And there's a couple details that I want to point out, because you can go as high-end custom as you want and just have an absolute showstopper, or you can go towards the other end of the spectrum where you're just looking for the most durable, longest lasting to increase and keep your ROI coming in for years to come. But one of the ADUs that we are looking at, this one right here in particular, is about a 430 square foot home. Is that correct, John?
Correct.
Okay. And so there's a full-size kitchen inside that thing. You can look at that right there. You see a full-size range. But there's a couple of really, really trick components they did inside that. If you look right here, you can see that's a single drawer refrigerator, and just below that is a single drawer freezer. Just above this, you can see this is right here what it looks like. To the left, you can see where they tuck the microwave in, and right underneath that, they put in a single drawer dishwasher. So you really can have full-size living with smaller homes. It's really incredible what these guys are doing with these things. So,
well, one thing I want to note real quick, Jeremy, I hate to interrupt you, but just to put things in perspective, the home you're referring to is 12 feet wide, 14 feet wide by 36 feet long. or no, 12 feet wide by 36 foot long. That's 430 square feet. Sometimes that's all you can fit on that property. And with ADUs, it's not about, or small, any kind of small structure that you're living in. It's not about the square foot. It's about what you do with the cubic foot. And you just pointed that out very well.
Thank you for that. Well, now we get to the one of the parts that is going to determine how much you can get, and that's the financial aspect of it. So there's several ways to pay for these. One, you've got the cash. And if you've got the cash, go right ahead and spend it. The problem is once your cash is spent, it's gone. Lots of folks turn and look to the traditional HELOC, the home equity line of credit. Well, if you're unaware of this, several of the biggest lenders in the entire world just stopped offering lines of credit. And those that are currently offering them still, their sources for those are steadily drying up, and they're anticipating possibly being gone in the very near future. On top of that, if you currently have a traditional home equity line of credit, they can be turned off at any time. If you had those during 2007, 8, 9, if you had them, most of you experienced having those turned off by the bank. That brings us to the cash out refinance. Well, the challenge with that is you have to make the payment as soon as that loan funds. But what if the project goes over the timeline? The average modular build is between 6 and 12 months. The average site built is between 12 and 18 months. But you have to make that mortgage payment no matter what for the whole entire time. Lastly is the renovation loan, and that means that you have to use that money on that property specifically. So what's the solution? Well, if you're 62 or older, it's the HECM loan. The HECM loan is a home equity conversion mortgage, and what it is an FHA insured line of credit. Now, because these are FHA insured, they can never be reduced and they can never be revoked, regardless of the value of your home. And you are never required to make a mortgage payment, not before, not during, or after construction, which means that as soon as you put a renter in there, this is pure cash flow. Now, like I said, you do have to be 62 years old or older. The loan does have to be on your primary residence, but you can use the money anywhere, which means you can do this HECM loan on your primary residence and build an ADU on a rental property or a series of rental properties. The opportunities are limitless. So if you have questions regarding specifics to the ADUs, please reach out to John at Crest Backyard Homes. There's his contact info right there. If you have questions regarding the HECM loan, please reach out to me specifically. There's my contact info at the bottom there. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to open this up to some questions. If you would please, there's a chat box in your menu panel. Would you please type your questions into that chat box? Looks like we've got a hand raised. So here was one question that we had. Someone is asking, how many of these modular ADUs can I put on a single family residence? And we actually had this discussion with a gentleman yesterday. Right now, on a single family residence, you're able to put one modular ADU, a detached modular ADU on that property. See if we
Well, you can also do a JADU.
That's correct. Yep. And just so you know, if you're doing the JADU does have to be carved out of the existing structure. That's one of the key parts of the JADU. You can't add on structure. It's got to come in the existing structure.
And to clarify that, a JADU is a junior accessory dwelling unit, and it can be up to 50% of the size of your footprint. A lot of ordinances or jurisdictions only allow 500 square feet. Again, this is jurisdiction mandated. So you got to know your local ordinance.
Yeah, and speaking of the jurisdictions and the local mandates, it's very important that you guys understand, and we're going to be discussing this extensively in our upcoming webinar series, the specific state guidelines that they are requiring local ordinances to follow. Because if you don't know, you don't know, and that's why you guys are all here to learn. And so as we start to uncover that stuff, it'll really arm you so that when you actually get to the point where you say, hey, I want to build this certain size or that certain size or put it on this certain location, in a lot of cases, the city's not going to have a choice. They're going to be required to let you do it, just as long as it meets the state laws. Let's see if we can get another question or two out of here before we run out of time. Oh, this one. John, how long have you been in business for?
35 years.
35 years. How many of these things do you think you've done over the 35 years you've been in business?
Oh, God. It's all shapes and sizes, hundreds, the variety of shapes, sizes. We do consulting work. We've done a lot of those. I mean, can't even begin to tell you how many consulting assignments I've had in this. I also do expert witness if there's issues or problems or complaints that need to be, handled legally. We serve as expert witnesses. We've designed and built on-site. We've designed and built off-site. As a general and manufactured home contractor, we can do both. We do design, build, ground up. I've got a daughter who's a world-class designer in the Cedros Design District. I've got a son who's an unbelievable general and site-built general contractor. He's also a manufactured home contractor, helps us with a lot of our projects. We work together as a family unit. I refer an awful lot of jobs to both my daughter and my son. I think collectively we've probably got about 100 years of experience in this industry.
All right, so we got a couple of questions here popping in. I want to make sure to address these. One of them was, is this going to be recorded so it's going to be viewed later? And the answer is yes. If you happened to miss this, you'll see the link in the email. Otherwise, we will send out a link to all the attendees so you can actually share it with other folks too. There will be the next webinar coming up on Tuesday. That's going to be Tuesday the 18th, same time, 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. If you happen to miss it, it will be recorded. Next question we got, John, this one's for you. Can you do over-the-counter permit processing for modular units in the city of San Diego?
I have to check on that. There's some issues with the city of San Diego specifically that we're dealing with. They don't really connect all the dots when it comes to modular. They're all over the place. And frankly, a lot of it just depends on who's working the counter. Hopefully they've got experience in modular. A lot of folks don't. I mean, every time we go to the county or the city or any of the local jurisdictions, you don't know who you're going to be working with. And if they don't have somebody that's experienced and knowledgeable about the process, it can be arduous. Over the counter, yes and no. You still have to go through all the other things I mentioned earlier. There's a lot of stations that they're going to put you through. Your fire might have to be addressed. Again, your school district is going to probably have to be addressed separately. So there are extenuating circumstances involved. It's not just an easy breezy type thing. I know there's cities out there and even the county that have pre-approved drawings, but if you change that drawing one incy bit, you're going to be paying for re-engineering, re-submittals of the plans and everything. So it's not all easy breezy. None of this stuff that you're hearing about is that great. And I mean, I'm perfected, I should say. It's all great. It's just not perfected yet. By the way, I wanted to add before we cut everybody loose, we have a couple of furnished models that we've done ourselves that you can come up and take a look at anytime. We're in Locadia, and I welcome anybody. We show them by appointment because they are in a private residential community, so we don't want to be disturbing other folks' privacy. But you're more than welcome to come up and check them out. I can walk you around the neighborhood in Locadia where we've done several projects. And I hope you take that opportunity because we'd like to show you the quality of work that we do.
Yeah, it really is amazing. So we got two more quick questions I want to make sure and get addressed. These are very important. One of them is, do we work in Orange County? So I can offer HECM loans anywhere in the state of California. And I know that Crest will, if they're not going to do it physically, they do have some phenomenal relationships with folks that they'll be able to hand you off to seamlessly.
And we do service, just so everybody knows, South Orange County up to San Juan Capistrano, San Clemente, and we'll also service South Riverside County up to Murrieta, Hot Springs in that area, and we'll also go as far east as Palm Springs and Palm Desert in that area, and through the Banning Pass and Beaumont.
Got it. All right, so one last one. This is a big one. Okay, so this one is, if my property is zoned R2 and zip code 92115, can I add an ADU and there are already 2 houses on the lot?
Yep, you can have 2 ADUs.
Isn't that
You-
amazing? 2 ADUs.
you
You
can
could actually turn that into a 4 property cash flowing opportunity. That's amazing.
have 6.
6, excuse me, 6.
You can also add the JADU.
Oh, that's right.
You can
That's
turn it
right.
into a triplex, essentially. Well, yeah, a triplex on each lot.
And let's see here what we got. One more. One of the questions was, aren't many of the local ordinances unenforceable as they illegally limit the state federal mandate? And that is true. That is true. We just had a discussion with a gentleman yesterday, and they are actively working to make sure that the local jurisdictions are complying with the state mandates. Yeah, the state does not want the local ordinances standing in the way of homeowners being able to build these ADUs. Quick question from, what does modular actually mean? John, you want to grab that one?
Well, it's built in a factory, complete. There's 3 different types of offsite building options, actually 4 now with containers. First, you got your HUD manufactured home. There's issues there. That's the least expensive way to go. But there are some issues with financing and refinancing and appraisals and a lot of other extenuating circumstances. There's modular, which is basically, they go down the same production lines practically as manufacturers do. Manufacturers on their own chassis with their own running gear. A modular is built, basically has to comply with local jurisdictions, whereas manufactured is preemptive. And then you also have kit homes or panelized. If you can't fit a modular on your property, you can do a kit or a panelized option, which is, again, is probably a bit more economical than having to go straight site built. And now they've got containerized solutions, which are beautiful. Some of the containerized designs and architectural motifs are just out of this world. But any offsite construction is done in a factory, and that's basically what a modular is. Now, both HUD, manufactured, and modulars must be completely ready, habitable before they leave the factory. In other words, when they get to your site and they're installed, you get the keys, you go in, you can sleep in it, you can cook in it, you can use the restroom, you can shower, you can do everything. You're ready. It's turnkey. It has to be. Those are the laws.
Got it. Thank you. We got time for one last question, and then we're going to have to wrap this up. And this is a big one. Are lenders okay with modular construction when you want to refinance or sell? Now, I will say this. I've been in the lending business for 20 years, and you do face challenges occasionally, but there's a difference between modular and manufactured. Manufactured has the HUD tags. Modular does not. We've never had an issue with a modular home when it comes to any kind of traditional financing or the HECM loans, the FHA stuff. With the manufactured properties, I can get HECM loans done regardless of that, but that doesn't mean that other traditional financing can always do that. So sometimes they can encumber a property or a deal when you want to refinance or sell, but with the modular stuff specifically, it does not. We've never had an issue with it. So with that being said, I want to make sure you guys be on the lookout. Make sure to tune into our next session on Tuesday, May 18th at 10 a.m. Be on the lookout for that link. Make sure and register. You guys have a great day.
Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for joining us.